I'm delighted to be joined from Washington by author, journalist, and I-24's very own Dan Raviv, whose magazine story, Inside the Iron Dome, appears in the latest issue of Moment magazine. Hey, Dan.
Pleasure to be with you, Barbara, finally, here on Strictly Security.
Yes, I'm delighted. So your story focuses on a relatively nondescript engineer and his team, yet you managed to make it read like a thriller. So tell us about this unsung hero of yours and the Tower of Babel that managed to turn Iron Dome into a well-known symbol of Israeli innovation.
Well, because, of course, it was such an invention and so innovative out of the Israeli defense industry, I certainly wondered, like, who were the key people? And so I was lucky enough to meet Hanoch Levin. He's now 67 years old, but we go back to the year 2006, 12 years ago. In the summertime, there was a war on the northern border, and Hezbollah in Lebanon was raining northern Israel with thousands of rockets, and frankly, Israel did not have any suitable response against especially the cheap rockets. Yeah, and so things were so different then, and Hanoch Levin already worked for Rafael. That's an Israeli state-owned company, but out there to make a profit if they can, that invents, innovates, creates weapon systems. It's located in Haifa, in that northern Israeli port city. And so Levin had worked for them for a really long time, but he was inspired because his own town, not far from Haifa, actually was hit by some of those Hezbollah rockets from the north, and he was frustrated, and he heard that his company, Rafael, was trying to come up with ideas. Now, what he was and is an engineer, so he can come up with practical ideas, and he's a team organizer.
Right.
So the truth is, as Rafael made a suggestion to the Ministry of Defense that it wants to bid for a contract to come up with an anti-rocket system that could be effective against short-range rockets and even mortar shells. The thing about the short-range rockets, whether fired by Hezbollah or more recently by Hamas in Gaza, is that they tend to be erratic. Yeah, they're very cheaply made. You don't know where they're going to go. So how can you set up a defensive system? As a matter of fact, the man who at the time was the defense minister of Israel, Amir Peretz, at the time of that war in 2006,
lives in
he'd been told by a lot of top scientists in Israel, and Israel's defense ministry, there he is at the top of the ministry. He turns to these specialists, and they say, there's no answer against these erratic, cheap weapons. What do you want us to do? Put up a volleyball net and hope that you can bounce them back to the enemy? I mean, how could you possibly track them? Well, Rafael was willing to rise to the occasion, and they made Hanoch Levin the team manager, the manager really of the team that eventually gave birth to Iron Dome, and he stayed with it, and the work really was from the approval by the Security Cabinet of the Israeli government in December of 2007 to the first successful intercept in the spring of 2011.
Yes.
So nearly 3.5 years.
Record time.
Just thinking that there's a way to invent that. Yeah. Well, it really is, and there's so many things that really are record-breaking. It's not just about the personalities on the team, which I get to write about in Moment magazine, as long as I didn't give their full names. A lot of these people still work in your Israeli defense industry, and we couldn't give their full names, just their first names. But what a colorful team, right? People from the former Soviet Union who were experts on numbers, and other aeronautical engineers who could come up with the most maneuverable fins possible. You have to put fins on the side of a missile if you want to send it up and guide it, and the electronic eye that is in it, and the onboard computer. We couldn't give away all the secrets, but all the parts that had to come together, that was the Tower of Babel.
And
so many engineers, so many teams working on different parts of it.
This slim, nimble young woman who spent a lot of her time in the launch tubes, that was very interesting.
Her name was Tzipi, and she was, a trained engineer working at Rafael, but it turned out that you could save a lot of time and a lot of money if someone was flexible and, to be frank, thin enough to crawl into the launch tube head first and go down there and check the wiring, check for any problems, see if anything was stuck or jammed. Normally, you'd have to come up with a machine to do it. You'd have to take a lot of time. And so what was really cute, there really was a sign in Hebrew on the lab where she worked that said at the end of the night, check if you left Tzipi in the chute. Did you leave Tzipi in the launch tube?
Now
so sometimes that's the personal thing, Barbara.
Absolutely. Now you write about how Rafael, in exchange for very very generous U.S. funding assistance, was compelled to share technological know-how with Raytheon, its U.S. partner, and how this caused angst by Hanoch and his team here over in Israel.
Sensitive point. It's true. And Hanoch Levin, the main central character in our true story, he's retired now from Raphael. That's really why I can give his full name. Hanoch Levin says, I'm not charging that Raytheon, that company based in Massachusetts, has done anything wrong. I can understand why it happened, but we are actually disappointed. We thought this would be entirely a blue and white project, which is what Israelis call an all-Israeli project. But at a certain point, frankly, Israel was running out of interceptor missiles. They cost about $50,000, $60,000 each, and so there had to be an injection of cash. You had to speed along the process. The Obama administration said, yes, we'll give you the assistance, but on condition that you let an American company, Raytheon was the lucky one, have almost all the secrets and the plans. And so Raytheon is manufacturing a lot of the interceptor missiles that then go to Israel's Iron Dome, but now Raytheon is selling a similar system and putting it on the world market. We'll see how it sells. It'll probably sell well because it is basically, it's basically an American version of Iron Dome. Sky Hunter is now being shown off, at arms conventions around the world. The Israelis are a little bit disappointed, but Raphael, the Israeli-owned company, it still will be getting a commission on every sale. They're a little disappointed by the reality of the situation.
And we should note that Raphael and Raytheon also enjoy a thriving partnership with David Sling.